Culture has many meanings to it, one of them being a shared way of life of a defined group of people.
There's a portion of culture that covers the shared way of life of a defined group of people, meaning the way that a fixed group interacts and lives in accordance with their common ideologies. This
Culture appropriation has been in practice even in older times when people made use of blackface, where people of non African American culture painted their faces in black to play the roles of African Americans during plays, but it occurs even presently on quite a large scale. Cultural appropriation, defined broadly as the use of a culture's symbols, artifacts, genres, rituals, or technologies by members of another culture. But there is little more to it. Usually, the culture that is being appropriated is a marginalized and oppressed one, and the culture that appropriates is a dominant culture. Therefore, a more focused definition would be the unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of the customs, practices, ideas, etc. of one people of society by members of another, and a typically more dominant people of society. It is important to consider the dynamic between the two cultures, as this is what renders the adoption of the culture as inappropriate. More than anything else, it is certain objects or products of a culture that are used by other cultures, and this is because
cultural production is the most concrete portion of culture because it gives us objects and often physical items to look at and engage with. So although
and is situated farthest from what constitutes the core of culture, namely shared ways of life and ideologies, which is why it is the most prone to being taken out of its original context and used for appropriation. Why is cultural appropriation inappropriate?
because at the heart of cultural appropriation isn't just a cultural object, but power. Appropriation happens when you have a position of power or a member of a dominant culture who's able to take the parts of a marginalized culture that you enjoy, divorce them from their original meaning, and use them for entertainment value without considering their original context or having to deal with the negative ramifications that someone from that culture would have to deal with as a result of that same action. So while it may seem benign to the person who's extracting and enjoying the culture, the resulting damage can have real-world implications for the people whose culture has been misrepresented or
Cultural appropriation should thus be discouraged because it continues the oppression of the non-dominant culture, seen in the incident at the 2015 Oscars when Zendaya wore faux locks and received harsh criticism for it, with an entertainment program's host even stating, "Feels like she smells like patchouli oil or weed."
She smells like patchouli oil. Or weed. Yeah, maybe weed.
It doesn't give people credit for their own culture, which can be seen by taking the same example about Zendaya being criticized for wearing what is part of her own culture, but when Kylie Jenner, a person not belonging to African American culture, wore the same hairstyle, it is appreciated for being raw, groundbreaking, fresh, and edgy. It creates stereotypes.
Caribbean. We're seen as just like TV characters, the savage with the fringes and these boots that, aren't even accurate. Even our body paint has meaning, and then, you just put on this cheap paint that you probably got at the dollar store, for fun because you thought it was funny. Like, my existence is just comical or hilarious to you.
Obvious examples of Chola culture might be hoop earrings, drawn on eyebrows, or heavy lip liner. When people appropriate Chola culture in Halloween costumes, it erases the stories and narratives of people who identify with Chola culture.
And so it deeply hurts the sentiments of the people who belong to that particular culture. In addition, cultural appropriation also spreads misinformation about certain cultures. For instance, the misinformation that was disseminated through the Disney movie based on the story of Pocahontas that undermined the grievousness of the struggles she and her community actually went through. This doesn't mean that aspects of a culture cannot be spread among other people. Cultural products have always traveled from one place to the other through cultural exchanges, like in food festivals. These borrowings aren't the same as cultural appropriation because they don't involve power. When different cultures come together on an equal footing, exchange happens. There are appropriate and respectful ways in which others can participate in a culture as well, through cultural appreciation.
Todd? Cultural appreciation truly honors our nation's arts and cultures. When you appreciate, you take the time to learn and interact, to gain understanding of a culture or cultures different from your own. It is a cultural exchange based in mutual respect. The key is consent and participation. If it is about us, then it must include us.
Thus, coexisting peacefully with several cultures involves an effort to understand these cultures so that we do not cross the line between appreciation and appropriation.